One of the things that I've always loved about sports is comeback stories, and Cordarrelle Patterson had made the Pro Bowl in 2020 with the Bears as a kick returner. So his story of leading the Falcons in rushing yards this season, leading the Falcons in receiving touchdowns. I think a career high 52 catches on 68, 69 targets, so pretty high catch percentage. Obviously, I know some of those catches coming out of the backfield, probably a lot of them. So maybe it's not a comeback story, but it's definitely a comeback story from the standpoint of how he was utilized. And I think it's something to be said about coaching as well. His turnaround in 2021, someone figured out how to use this guy properly. I think the Patriots touched on it maybe in 2016 or 17 a little bit. He had 64 rushing attempts with the Bears in 2020, as you see from the stats here. But look, he had 40% of his career rushing yards came last season with Atlanta. 153 rushing attempts, which is about 47%, 46% of his overall rushing attempts in his career. Like I said, career high 52 catches, ties his career high, I should say. 11 total touchdowns led the Falcons. Honestly, in a lot of ways, he was their best offensive player. I think he had 205 touches over the course of the season. What we're going to do now is we're going to look at how he impacted the game out of the backfield or lined up as a receiver. Here he is in empty, lined up against an inside linebacker for the Saints. I think Quan Alexander beats him pretty easily on the sluggo route. Three-man rush by the Saints, so no pressure on the quarterback at all. Cordarrelle Patterson, maybe he's not a great route runner from a standpoint of being a number one or number two receiver. I know that they had issues with Calvin Ridley this year. They got Kyle Pitts, the tight end, who had like 69 catches, but on a lot of targets, like 102 or 103 targets. Cordarrelle Patterson took advantage of the opportunities he got, and he got more opportunities here this year. And that's the point that I'm trying to make, honestly, is there's a lot of guys that are underutilized or misutilized in the NFL. I don't even think misutilized is actually a word, but there's guys who are utilized a particular way for 2 or 3 years to begin their career, and they never get out of that mold. They're never allowed to evolve. I shouldn't even really say evolve. Maybe Cordarrelle Patterson was capable of this throughout his entire career. He was just waiting on a coach or a coaching staff to give him these opportunities. Anyway, let's look at his impact, and now let's go by where he was placed or where he was aligned. So first we're going to start out of the eye. He was utilized a lot on lead concepts where he's following the fullback. Some people call it ISO, some people call it lead, stretch plays, or in this case, like a split zone with a called wind back. He got multiple carries back-to-back against the Panthers. This is 2 plays back-to-back. The first one was kind of a bruising downhill run. Here's like a lead zone concept where he's pretty much untouched for a touchdown. He was a big part of the game plan in some of these games this season, and what I mean by that is he was used to run the ball on maybe consecutive plays, or he ran the ball once and then they ran a play action concept immediately thereafter. Look, and everything's not just clear windows for him to run through. He bounces this thing out to there is open space there, but the Panthers were committed to stopping the run on a downhill fashion there, and he's able to find it. So he has good vision. He is able to find it and bounce it outside. Toss play where he gets knocked out of bounds pretty hard by safety coming downhill at an angle. Cordarrelle Patterson, 6'2", 220. Here's some plays out of the eye against the Eagles. Defensive end spikes inside. Patterson's able to read it and bounce it outside behind the fullback for a nice 10 or 11-yard gain. I don't think the Eagles in Week 1 understood that Cordarrelle Patterson was a running back now. I really don't think they understood. They had to after multiple plays like this. This is a nice little cutback off of a stretch play to the right. Cuts it all the way back. I think it was like a 19 or 20-yard gain. There were some issues with the mesh point out of particular backfield alignments early in the season. I saw 2 kind of mishandled snaps between Cordarrelle Patterson and Matt Ryan. Here's one of them there. But I only found 2. And like I said, he had 153 carries on the year. I venture to say, depending on where he goes, he may have more next year. He may equal the same amount. Good vision, if you ask me. Really strong runner. Plays through contact well. They have the backup Mike Davis as having more broken tackles on the season for the Falcons, and that's fine. But I saw him running through a lot of contact. I didn't see him going down on first contact right where he was. I mean, you can see on a lot of these runs out of the eye, he's untouched to the line of scrimmage with his speed and his power. If he's able to get to the line of scrimmage untouched, he's going to get some yards, whether he's got to cut it back or whether he's hitting it on the same track that he's designed to. I think the final stats for the year show 4.0 yards per carry for Cordarrelle Patterson, so that's not great. And there's people who look at stats and that's all they look at, and they would say, well, that's not that good. Well, if you look at these runs here, you can see the impact that he has. You can see the ability that he has when he's given an actual lane to run through or a cutback lane, and he's got the vision. I think he's going to have an impact in 2022 for somebody. I believe his contract is up with the Falcons. I'm a Ravens fan. Would I like to see him on the Ravens? Absolutely. I think he gives you position versatility. I'm going to make a basketball comparison. In basketball, they talk about positionless basketball now. I don't know if you guys saw the D lineman try to trip in there or not. Rewind it for yourself so you can see it. And that happens more often than you think. Positionless basketball is having like 5 guys who can handle the ball, who can shoot, who can all run pick and roll or screen and roll, and who can all spot up, right? To hit the open shot when you get a 4-on-3 after the pick and roll. Well, look, the NFL has guys like who provide that. Deebo Samuel is an example of that. Positionless, he could be a receiver, he could be a slot receiver, he could be an X, he could be a running back. In this case, actually, Cordarrelle Patterson's more of a running back than Deebo Samuel from the standpoint of a traditional tailback. Deebo Samuel primarily was in the gun, meaning the typical shotgun where running back is next to the quarterback on one side or the other. It's an interesting thought in football, in the NFL, at that highest level as well, to think about someone who can play tailback and someone who can then split out wide and play running back and can beat certain DBs. Could he beat the number 1 corner on each team? Probably not. But providing that positional versatility, I think, is very interesting. All right, let's look at some other alignments for him, or when he's running the football and there's not a fullback in front of him to block. So in the gun here, it's like a stretch to play to their right, the bottom side of the screen against the Eagles. He's going to cut it up inside of the right guard's block and get a pretty nice gain. You can see he runs downhill. It takes multiple guys to tackle him, and he's excited about it. I think he brought some passion that the Falcons' young players seemed to be drawn to or seemed to build on. You saw reaction from his teammates, I thought, on film. I can't hear anything, but I thought I saw reaction from his teammates that indicated they were happy for him and that he was providing some leadership in the direction they needed to go. I tried to provide plays in packages against, multiple teams so you could see what he was asked to do in certain weeks. Of course, there were some runs I'm not including here that went for 0 or 1 yard, that brought his average down to 4 yards per carry. Still pretty effective if you ask me, being as it's his first year, primarily being used as a running back, where he was his supplementary or complementary role was as a receiver. I didn't get the chance to go back and watch Chicago film from 2020. I did look at the stats and see that he had 60 plus carries as an actual running back for the Bears that season. But this season was drastically different. I think him and Deebo Samuel are the only guys who have been used in this role to this depth. So they have breadth of assignment, being used as a receiver in the slot or as the X, and then also as a tailback. And then there's depth to it too, meaning it's happening a lot. It's not just 4 or 5 times a game. To me, this was a lot, especially with Cordarrelle Patterson. I know Deebo Samuel as well. I'd like to hear some feedback from you guys in the comment section of what you think about Cordarrelle Patterson. If you think I'm overstating the impact that he had. But look, just to be honest, my perspective on the game is anybody in the NFL is worthy of respect, especially someone who has, I think he had 1,150 yards from scrimmage and 11 touchdowns, which, like I said, led the Falcons this season. If you lead your NFL team in touchdowns, I think that's pretty incredible. But in any case, you see how he's used in the screen game. We're going to transition to him being used as a receiver. I think he had 3 touchdown catches against Washington. This one looks kind of anomalous. Looks like a little bit of a blown coverage. He's the X receiver up at the top, just running a post, and nobody picks him up. The free safety jumps nothing in the middle of the field. Not sure what he's jumping, and Patterson is wide open. Look, is his burst great when he's lined up as an X? No, but it's good enough to beat the guys who will be lined up on him if you have a number 1 and number 2, or even, in the Falcons' case, number 3 receiver. You see he can make people miss. Scored a lot of touchdowns, 11 touchdowns in 17 games is pretty impressive if you ask me. Watch this catch. One-on-one down here, outside the bottom of the numbers, a back shoulder fade, and this is a beautiful catch. We'll give you 2 angle views of this. Kind of tries to sell it to the inside. Doesn't really elevate, but he's 6'2". He doesn't really necessarily have to. He's got a long reach. You can see him high point the football perfectly. How do they find time for him to do all this stuff in practice? That's what's interesting to me. How do they find time for him to be a kick returner, which he still was this season, to execute all the mesh stuff at running back and line up at receiver? because it's not just simple like, hey, just show up 20 minutes early. A, they can't do that, and B, it's not good for the player's health to be out there an hour and 20 minutes longer over the course of a week than everybody else on the team. They do have to limit how much they can do with these guys. I like how savvy he is. You'll get the end zone angle of this play too. The linebacker is assigned to him, number 45, Devin White. The linebacker thinks he's just staying into pass pro, which he is, but Patterson's able to adapt quickly and then make a one-hand catch. Once he saw White, leave to go blitz, then he just slipped out into the flats, even though he wasn't necessarily supposed to. Multiple touchdowns against the Bucs, and even a fake play action screen back to him to the far side of the field, which I thought was an interesting play. I think the Falcons' play calling showed a lot of trust in Cordarrelle Patterson, deservedly so, because he made plays, all season. Here's a nice cutback touchdown that I'll give you two angles of. I love how he's able to put his foot in the ground and cut this thing back real quick. Just a slight little cut. I'll rewind it so you can see it multiple times. Again, let me know in the comment section if you guys think I'm overstating what the guy's capable of doing. My larger point is I think there's a lot of Cordarrelle Pattersons in the NFL and in all of pro sports who get pigeonholed into one role, kick returner, or whatever the case may be, and they're actually capable of doing more than that, and they're just waiting for someone to give them the opportunity. This video was one that was really fun for me to do. I heard a lot about him during the season. I was able to keep up and save certain plays as the season progressed. I know that this video was more of a commentary on how players are used and pigeonholed, like I said, more so than a film study. I think I did, comment on some of the things that I noticed out of his play. The Falcons weren't a great football team, obviously, but there was some things they did well in the run game with Cordarrelle Patterson. I really appreciate any feedback you guys give me. This is the first, quote, player study that I'm doing for the offseason. I know the season's not over yet. We still got the Super Bowl left to go next week. I'm looking forward to getting feedback from you guys so I can tailor the player studies to what people would like to see. If you have any suggestions for other players from the league, please let me know. I'm looking to do at least one per team, if not two, in the 12 to 15 minute range like this one.